Good evening and welcome to Concord and Victory. Tonight, we are delighted to be joined by Reverend James Righetti, chaplain here at Stowe. Since being licensed in 2020, Reverend Righetti has played a central role in school life, leading chapel, teaching history, coaching cricket and hockey, and supporting pupils as a tutor in Grafton.
His journey at Stowe has been anything but ordinary. Having studied history and law in Australia, he went to complete a Bachelor's of Divinity at Moore. Before becoming a chaplain, he was involved in expanding an education company in the UK, an experience that combines business, leadership and education. It was during that time when he began speaking in school chapels and Christian meetings that he felt a call to ministry.
This evening, we'll be exploring the theme of building trust and boundaries. This is something that matters for all of us, whether in chapel, in the classroom, on the sports field, or even the mentoring program between sixth form and third form.
So to begin, Rev Righetti, could you tell us what trust means to you in a school community like Stowe and why you think it's so important?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. I think trust is absolutely crucial in any relationship. So if you think about friendship, if you think about a relationship of some kind, and in community, trust is what enables people to know that other people are for them, that they can relate to and communicate with other people. So, we think truth is important, but truth builds trust. We think being kind and nice is important, but that's because they also build trust. So I think trust is absolutely crucial in any community, let alone a place of 1,500 people like we are here at Stowe.
As chaplain, how do you gain that trust with fellow people at Stowe?
So I think as a person, I try and gain trust trust is really hard to gain. That's the first thing to say. And I think that when we have it, it's far easier to lose trust than to gain it. I used to work with a guy who was quite wise on a lot of topics, and he thought hard about trust. And he used to say, it takes 3 times as long to build trust as it does to lose it. So you think you could spend months getting to know someone and they trust you and you trust them, but then they break that trust and it disappears really quickly. So I guess the answer to the question is, I try and make sure that whenever I am trusted, with information, with people being vulnerable, I try to make sure that I always honour that. And that just builds trust a little bit more each time.
As Muna was saying about building trust, because obviously your experience in building trust with younger years, what advice would you give us about building trust with our third form mentees?
Yeah, so the first one is where you do get given that little bit of trust is to make sure you make the most of that and to not let it disappear or evaporate by betraying that trust. I think a big part of building trust is spending time with people. So I believe that people won't care about what you want them to care about until they know you care about them. So if you're wanting a third form mentee to be able to tell you how they're feeling, to be able to buy into the house and the school values and these things, the first thing we need to do is make sure that they know we're bought into them. And that means being interested with them. And that's what I try and do as chaplain. I try and spend my time getting to know pupils. So trying to eat lunch with pupils when I can. Visiting boarding houses and day houses as well. So that they know that I'm not just here doing a role, I genuinely want to know them. And I think a similar kind of approach, trying to invest time, is going to be a good thing from any mentor.
When it comes to trust, boundaries are important. How can someone keep that boundary while also gain their trust?
Yeah, you're right. I guess boundaries matter from the point of view of, well, first of all, they build trust. If people know how to relate to one another, then they're going to feel much more comfortable, which is likely to build trust. Also, where boundaries are clear, it's going to mean that people are less likely to get it wrong, which is going to mean that the relationship's going to grow. So I think 2 boundaries are really important. The first is with time. So making sure that you know how much time is going to be invested in the mentoring relationship, and being disciplined on not letting that go too much beyond that. But also boundaries in terms of role. I think probably the most important thing in being a chaplain or a mentor of any kind when it comes to trust and boundaries is knowing what your role is and what it isn't. So if I'm meeting with a pupil, I know I'm not a therapist. So where our conversation might go in that direction, I know that what I want to do is to say, okay, we've got a wonderful therapy team who are going to be able to help with that, but let's come back to and continue to work on what is within the scope of my role. So for any mentor, to know the boundaries of where their role is, that's going to help them to make sure they stay focused on what they can actually help them with, and then pass the concerns on, or even that relationship on when necessary to other people for whom that is their area.
You mentioned about spending time with people, and obviously you're a sports coach for hockey and cricket.
Mm-hmm.
In a team, how do you manage to make everyone feel comfortable and make a team dynamic?
Yeah. It's something I'm still working on in lots of ways. I have coached a lot of sport, but in every team and every season you'll start again. I think one of the big principles that comes from I guess my own beliefs is that everyone matters. That comes from the Bible. I think you don't need to be a Christian to believe that, but it's very much part of how I view people. And so therefore, when it comes to a team, I want every member of that team to know that I am for them, whether they are the best player or right on the edge, or they only play one game with us. That doesn't matter. I'm for everyone because everyone matters. And I think that builds a relationship of trust between coach and player, in the same way that I want every Stoic who sits in chapel to know that I am for them, regardless of what they believe or don't believe, and therefore they can trust me in any context they find me in.
When it comes to you being a chaplain, how do you connect trust in God with the other students?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I became a Christian a bit later in life, probably age 23. So, it was age 23, and at that time, a big part of becoming a Christian is to say, well, I'm going to put my trust in Jesus. And so I know what that looks like, but it's quite different when you've got people who can let us down. So I want to make sure I'm modeling trust to the Stoics and to everyone in this community, that people can trust me, because if they can't trust me, then why would they listen to what I'm teaching in chapel? But I also want them to know that I am likely to make mistakes. I am likely to get things wrong, whereas the God I'm talking about, it's a different kettle of fish. He can be entirely trusted. So it's both and. I want to point them to the trust they can have in God, but also, while I'm trying to model it, I know that I'm not always perfect. I do get things wrong.
As one of the most approachable people in the school, have you ever found it difficult trying keeping professional boundaries and that when everyone knows they can approach you?
Do you know, I haven't had too many problems with it at Stowe, and I actually think that's more about you guys than me. So, for example, I'm known as Rev, and I'm very happy with that informality. But no one in my 2.5 years here has ever gone beyond that. No one's ever kind of, given me reason to think, I probably need to go back to being more formal. It needs to be sir or whatever it is. In a context like this, I think most people know how to interact between pupils and staff. And therefore, I can be a little bit more informal. But it is a danger. It really is. And I think if I were to think, actually, this is becoming a bit unhelpful, that perhaps I'm perhaps being a little too matey, I suppose, rather than maintaining that boundary, I would want to pull back and say, well, maybe we just need to reassess how this is going. But yeah, I haven't had too many issues in that space.
How do you think people connect with their mentees as a mentor? Yeah,
so I guess what I'm trying to do as chaplain is spend as much time as I can with the third form year group. So that is the year group, and it's not because they're in any way special or more special than other year groups. It's because if I get to know you in the third form, I know you for 5 years. That's why I teach the third form, coach sport to the third form, etc. So for me, time investment and them knowing that I'm there for them matters a lot. So for a mentor, actually spending time with the mentee in order to get to know them. That doesn't mean you need to literally be spending all the time with them, but if you've got allocated time where you're like, this is our time to catch up, making that a priority is really important. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And then as the trust grows, doing everything you can to maintain that trust and working really hard to not let that trust ever be betrayed, because then a little bit more trust will grow, and that's where you grow into a really excellent working relationship.
Before Stowe, you were involved in expanding an education company in the UK. To make that run smoothly, you must have used certain skills. And what skills would they be to help us develop a smooth and comfortable connection with our mentees? Yeah,
I did. I mean, I learned a lot through that. I was pretty young when I started running this company, and I hadn't really had an experience of managing staff before or recruiting. I'd done a little bit, but therefore I've made a lot of mistakes. So I guess the first thing I'd say is you're going to get things wrong. You're going to, ask the wrong question. You're going to catch people at the wrong time. And therefore just being okay with going, all right, I'm not perfect at this. I think when I was running the business, often some of the things I found hardest was when I just wanted to make sure everything went right all the time. But you make mistakes and you learn from that. Another thing I learned was the importance of time management. So if you're running a company that is growing, that is big as a startup, it can easily be a 7-day-a-week thing, just like a boarding school in that respect. And so I needed to learn how to make sure I have time off as well as time on. And so from a mentoring point of view, it's probably not great if you're coming out of wall-to-wall lessons, straight from the activities, you've got prep deadlines the next day, and that's the time you've elected to go and spend time with your mentee. You've got to make sure you're like, well, actually, I need to be well rested. I need to make sure that I've got my boundaries in place, and therefore I might put that into the next afternoon where it's a little bit more relaxed. That would probably be another thing that could help.
If your mentee is really needs your support, and you're really busy, how would you, say, oh, I can't right now, and try to find another time to do it?
The benefit of being a mentor at Stowe is you're not doing it alone. You're doing it within one of, I reckon, the best pastoral care systems of any school I've come across. And as you mentioned before, I've spent a lot of time in schools in the UK. And therefore, it's unlikely that a mentee is going to be completely isolated if you aren't able to work with them. There is house parents, matrons, tutors, prefects, medical centre, wellbeing, all these people, the chaplain, all these people who are there to help them. Having said that, if they've sought you out, that's a real honour. They clearly trust you. And so you want to work with that. So I think being able to say, I can't meet with you now for these reasons, and they'd want to be good reasons, but here are some other times what works. Says to the person, it's not possible now, but I do want to meet with you. As opposed to going, I'm too busy. That says, I'm actually too busy for you. You're a low priority for me. So always offering to say, here are some other times when works for you. I think that really matters. And if you're a senior student and you're offering a young pupil, here are some times, tell me what works for you. I think that makes them feel heard and listened to, even if you can't meet them at that point.
As someone who's joined Stowe quite recently, did you have a mentor, someone who helped you settle in, and if so, what qualities did they possess that helped you so much?
That's a really interesting question. So my predecessor, so the chaplain before me, I learnt so much about chaplaincy from. And wherever I was going to be a chaplain in the world, I wanted to do what Reverend Mullins had done when he was here at Stowe. To actually be able to follow him up is an amazing privilege. So having said that, he was very ill and actually died before I started. And therefore, I wasn't able to ask him much once I started in the role. So I therefore sought out people who I knew would be able to mentor me, even if it wasn't a formal relationship. So I've got a couple of different chaplains that I can pick up the phone to anytime and say, look, I'm kind of struggling with what to do here. Can I get your advice? But there are also people in different contexts who know me, who I can say, look, what do you think of this? Can I run some ideas past you? So I really, really respect the mentor system. I think it's really important. I believe it was actually Rev Mullins who set up the mentor system here at Stowe as well. So he believed in it. And therefore, you know, I have informal people I could speak to both when I started, but I'm still even asking their advice now.
When you at Stowe, you have many experiences. What's the most rewarding experience you've had at Stowe?
That's a really hard one. This is so cliche, but I genuinely think most weeks there are things where I say to my wife, gosh, how cool is this? I think probably for me, the Bible studies that we run and that pupils come along to have been just so rewarding. The reason, I mean, I love leading Bible studies. I love people being able to ask questions and grapple with the text as we move through it. But we've got nearly 90 pupils coming week by week, and they're giving up their lunchtime to do it. This is, as you know, such a busy place. But for each of those 5 or 6 Bible studies to be so big and so vibrant and people wanting to come and find out more, it just makes my job so rewarding because people really want to engage. In the same way that if you're a teacher and pupils were giving up their lunchtime to come and sit in a voluntary lesson, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And that's how I feel when they're rocking in and wanting to study the Bible at lunchtime. So that's really rewarding.
When making a relationship with a student, like a big part of that is setting goals. How do you make a realistic goal for a student and help them when it might not go to plan?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is a big part of any relationship, including with a mentee, is to help them to see what you're trying to achieve in moving forward. Again, I'll come back to the fact it's helpful to know them. There would be nothing more demoralizing for a mentee than for you to be attempting to set goals with them that are just a million miles above or actually even below where they are. Because they might be sitting there going, oh, yeah, and then they go away and think, how does he or she think I could even get close to anything like that? So knowing them is going to be really important. The second thing is we can teach people how to do things or we can show them. And I think in a lot of cases, it's more effective to show or to model the behaviours we want to see. So being able to talk about the goals you've set for yourself, either when you were in third form and the things that you wanted to be achieving, or now, this is how I've gone about my goal setting, is going to be really helpful for them to go, oh, I see how this works and I see what this matters, why this matters. And then on top of that, all the things you know about goal setting and making them realistic and tangible and timed and all those things. That's where I found goal setting in relationships to be really, really effective.
When it comes to goals, how would you personally try and help them create those goals?
I think working out what problems they're trying to solve. For example, goal setting doesn't work when they're vague and not attached to any kind of problems you need to solve. I want to get fitter. Okay, well, doesn't everyone? I want to work harder. Surely everyone wants to do that. But where it's at, okay, this is the issue. You're falling behind in this subject. Okay, what is the issue here? Oh, well, you know, I hate sitting down to do that. Okay, now we know the problem we're trying to solve. So the goal we're going to set is that when it comes to do prep, you're going to spend your first 15 minutes on that subject on these days. Do you think that's achievable? Yeah, 15 minutes for that subject on a Tuesday and a Friday, I could do that. Brilliant. Then, and this is the second thing, holding people accountable to it. The following week saying, hey, you know, we set that goal that you were going to try. How'd you go with that? And if they did it, celebrate success. That's awesome. It might seem really small. So they did biology in their first 15 minutes on 2 days. But for that pupil, it solved a problem that they had before. So celebrate that success, and then you can look to set new goals moving forward.
How big of a role would you say honesty plays in building a good relationship with your mentee?
Without thinking about it, I'm just going to come out and say I think it is the most important thing. For trust is so often built on our ability to know that the other person will keep their word. Therefore, as soon as we're talking about keeping your word, we're talking about honesty. It's one of the things I say is that if we can't, in any relationship, and as a tutor, I have this as well, if we don't have honesty, we don't have trust, and we don't have trust, we don't have a decent working relationship. So yeah, I think you cannot have trust without honesty. Therefore, they almost go hand in hand. Really important.
When a student makes like a big mistake, which you might like, where their actions you don't agree was correct, how important is it to comfort them and make sure like they still don't, that they feel remorse, but not enough to like cause a large amount of upset?
Yeah, it is really important. I try to be unshockable. And you're right, I think the difference between perhaps a chaplain or a house parent or someone in a pastoral team versus a mentor, there might be differences in terms of the scale of what's being dealt with, but maybe not. Maybe if you've got trust there, people come in saying, look, I've really messed up here. But the reason I try to be unshockable is so that in that moment of vulnerability, when someone says, I've stuffed up, that's a trust moment. And I don't want to betray it by going, what? You did that? Oh my, I can't believe it. They've been vulnerable in telling me what they've gotten wrong. And I then am actually betraying that trust by then judging them. So, of course, I'm not going to say, oh, that doesn't matter. But I want them to know, I'm unshocked. You tell me, okay, all right, so how do we move forward from this? And yeah, where necessary, you might be the first person they've told about this. So providing some kind of comfort, I think is taking an opportunity to care for someone that they're probably not going to forget.
What advice would you give to the fifth form who will come up to lower sixth when it comes to being mentors for the coming third form?
It will be easiest to be a mentor if it comes from existing passions. And what I mean by that is someone who says, oh, look, I have no time for any of that kind of caring for younger kids, I've got no interest in other people's problems, blah, blah, blah. I'll take that stuff seriously when I'm a chance to be a mentor. That is the worst reason to become a mentor. And it's also going to mean that when you do the role, you're never going to want to do it properly. You're only going to want to do it to the degree that means you're ticking a box. So the best mentors will be people that already have that kind of desire to help people settle in. When you see that third form on the first day who's absolutely lost and you think, I can help that person, I know where to go. That's the kind of behaviour that will make being a mentor really easy. So I guess the soundbite is start being a mentor now. Not officially, but already be looking out for people, because then it'll make the step up much, much easier.
Obviously this year there's the new assistant chaplain. What are you are you doing anything, and what are you doing to help her settle in at Stowe?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I am in that sense mentoring. So Miss Fleming has made a fantastic start because, again, there are systems in place. So each member of staff who starts gets a buddy, someone who isn't their direct line manager, who is responsible for being able to answer any kind of questions. But I meet regularly, and that meeting is a priority. So we meet straight after assembly on a Monday morning, and it's a chance to review the previous week and think about the week that's coming ahead, to think really clearly about what she's trying to achieve, what we're trying to achieve, and also any problems that have come up. And so, I think if I were to say, oh, look, I'm actually really flat out, I can't do that meeting this week, that would be the first sign that I am not actually seeking to mentor her well in that role. I think that combination of me doing my bit well and making sure there are other people that are also able to help Miss Fleming in other ways means that, she should settle pretty quickly.
One final question to finish.
Yeah.
If you could choose 3 skills to make the building blocks of any relationship, what would those 3 skills be?
Listening. I could say listening, but I won't. So listening, and that's that really actually paying attention to what people say. If someone tells you something, then 2 weeks later asking a question that shows you didn't actually listen to what was said, it's going to be bad for trust. So listening, honesty, that ability to be honest even when it's hard would be the second one. And I think maybe the third one is perspective. Remembering that this is important, but it's not ultimate. Let's not let things become too big, nor too small. We just keep things into perspective. I think those are three things that'll make any mentor relationship much more effective.
Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.